We'll now return to those last days as Clan Line prepares to leave Nine Elms Depot on her very last run as a BR engine on the 5th of July 1967. Here she is leaving the famous turntable that was the pivot of all movements on the large motive power depot. It too was at the end of its days. 5 days later it would close forever and in time be razed to the ground. Today the new Covent Garden Market stands on the site. Unlike the engine, there was no reprieve for Nine Elms. An effort has been made to make the soon-to-be preserved engine look presentable, but she's devoid of nameplates. These were only fitted in the latter days when she worked special trains. And so we join her crew in the cab as she moves up to the main line, where she'll reverse it down to the terminus at Waterloo. Our train consists of bullied coaches, yet another aspect of Southern Railway that was to go to scrap in a few days' time. Alongside sister merchant navy, Holland Africa Line displays classic bullied temperament as she struggles to get adhesion on the difficult Waterloo departure rails. With 35023 now gone, we get the road and set off towards Bournemouth. We're to ride Clan Line as far as Basingstoke. She would carry on down the main line. A last glimpse of Waterloo and we're off through the London suburbs. The first major feature is Clapham Junction, Britain's busiest station. A few steam memories persist. Portsmouth Electric, Old Nelson has passed. These had only a few more years' service. Wimbledon is next. We carry on without slowing. Surbiton, Sister Ellerman Lines passes with an up train. She's now a sectioned exhibit at the National Railway Museum. And so to Journey's End, for us Basingstoke. Lord Dowding awaits on the down slow and Clan Line is ready to carry on southward. On her return to London, she was to drop her fire and end her days as a BR engine. However, she was to live on, but this meant many hours of hard work by the members of the Merchant Navy Locomotive Preservation Society. Here we see the procedure for renewing white metal bearings on the big end. Molten white metal is poured into the mold formed from the shell and then, after prizing out, offered up to the axle for fitting. fireblocks show where there are uneven high points, and these have to be gouged out by hand, a long and tedious job. Other society members are seen working on the motion and in the firebox. From July 1967, she was based at Longmoor in Hampshire until the closure of the Army Railway there, and subsequently at Ashford. A full overhaul was undertaken by the Society, often working in atrocious conditions, in order to bring her back to mainline condition. This took place in 1974, when she worked a rail tour from Basingstoke to Westbury via Salisbury. That period of mainline use expired in 1981, and a further 7-year overhaul had to be undertaken. She returned to the main line in October 1984 and has subsequently worked on all parts of British Rail, as seen in this programme. Here we see her leaving Salisbury for Westbury on that momentous occasion when she first returned to Southern Metals. Another overhaul now looms in 1991, but let's return to her present role as one of British Rail's mainline steam engines. We'll now follow a typical modern working for Clanline, as Chairman John Bellamy polishes the nameplate at Carnforth Shed in Lancashire. The MNLPS takes a great pride in appearances. Everything is polished. She's due to work at Cumbrian Mountain Express the next day, so the first thing is to light her up. Smokey Crawforth brings wood and newspapers up and hands them to Ali Kirkland in the cab, where he puts the paper into the firebox, just like any coal fire. Next is the wood layer. The firelighter's job is the same as at home, but rather more so. Coal is next. Modern supplies are somewhat dubious. There's a lot of slack here, although the tender will be topped up before she goes off. Cleaning never stops. Removable parts have to be replaced, as is the whistle, as sadly modern souvenir hunters have to be kept at bay. Not all the jobs are pleasant. This is one of the reasons steam had to go from BR. Only enthusiasts want to do the labour-intensive coal shovelling duties, which are a necessary part of preparing a steam engine for work. A baffle plate has to be fitted next. This prevents cold air from reaching the crown of the firebox and impairing steaming. And now it's lighting up time. The coal lifeless machine is slowly reborn as the crew wait for the fire to take hold. Everything has to be checked.
Right, boiler level. Yeah. Tender, chimney cover down okay. Look. Smoke boxes have all been checked through and the whole lot. Yeah.
The fire takes a few hours to really get going, giving the crew a break.
Box and hoses.
Yes. Oh, just after 2 then, Ali, that was. Right.
A few more shovelfuls build up the fire, and then it's time to evacuate the cab.
Well, let's get on with it. Not the smoke coming out the chimney one here.
The cab is one of the few parts of the locomotive that was unchanged in appearance when they were rebuilt in the 1950s from Bulleid's original air smooth design. Clan Line was the last of the class to be modified in October 1959, the resulting handsome outline bearing a marked resemblance to the BR standard classes, although a very distinctive design in its own right. The most mechanical modification was the substitution of conventional valve gear for Bulleid's original chain-driven variety and removal of the oil bath. This resulted in more oiling and greasing points, but the exposed running plate and valve gear made the rebuilt design a far more efficient and cost-effective machine. As John Bailey finishes the lubrication round, we return to the cab for a description of its fittings by Smokey Crawford.
This cock's for steam supply for the vacuum brake and steam brake. This cock is a steam heating cock which registers on the steam heating gauge there. Keep the passengers warm. This cock is for the injector, the same as this one, and the two injectors are left hand and right hand injectors which are operated under the fireman's seat. Under the seat is the injector. You turn the water on and then the steam, and this operates the pet pipe for washing down the foot plate with the dust. That washes down the ash pan. This one washes the coal down in the tender and keeps the dust down. And then we've got the front and back dampers.
At last, the boiler pressure gauge registers the product of all the hard work. But there are a few hours to go before a decent working pressure is achieved. Maximum pressure is 250 psi, but 100 is enough to blast the whistle. And to move the loco off to be cold. Coaling took place in semi-darkness, so we move on to the next morning on the Carnforth to Hellifield line, where engine and support coach run backwards to take over the train at Hellifield. Now we're going to join driver Parrand on the long drag, the Settle and Carlisle line, as he prepares to take Clan Line out of Hellifield station on the Cumbrian Mountain Express. The fire's now white hot, the brake's being created, but steam has yet to be admitted to the steam chest before we can start. More firing is needed as pressure is still to be built to the maximum, and we await the right of way. A jerk on the regulator, and we're off. As soon as we're moving, driver Parrand reduces cutoff to about 60% from the starting position of 75%. And this is what we'd see from the line side, but this was 3 months earlier, with the dreaded Ethel on a misty December day, as the 3 cylinders dig in for the ascent to Ribblehead and Blee Moor on a wet rail. hard road necessitates virtually continuous firing, but within a few miles of the start, Fireman Wilson had increased the pressure to near maximum, as we were slowed at Settle Junction to take instructions from the signalman. BR regulations only allow 4 people on the footplate at any time. One of them must be an inspector. On this occasion, Paul Jameson officiated, the 4th person being somewhat obvious. Normally, the locomotive owners can nominate a representative to ride on the footplate with the crew. A restriction on the approach to Settle kept speed down, but after the station the engine was given its head as it attacked the first part of the 12-mile climb. Fireman and inspector have a chance to talk, as the big bullied boiler has the reputation of producing as much steam as is ever asked of it. After another stint, Fireman Wilson can lean out as we approach Sheriff's Brow. Halfway up the climb, the engine is pulling strongly. Fireman Wilson seems to be having it easy, but here's why. As Inspector Jameson attacks the fire with the pricker and lends his weight to the shovel. Steam running on BR is a PR job, and Mr. Wilson is really enjoying it. From the line side, our second camera records the rapid progress along cell side. No, he's not trying to put the fire out, just damping down the inspector. Ribblehead cottages indicate the approaching summit, as the driver ensures the regulator is fully open. Now we're atop the most famous landmark on the S&C, Ribblehead Viaduct, today reduced to a single line, but now reprieved and repaired. A few shovelfuls are still needed in the corners, even though the hardest part of the climb is nearly over. The lonely signal box at Plea Moor has seen it all before. In 1964, 35012 United States Lines had set the S&C alight on a rail tour with one of the legendary Nine Elms drivers, Bert Hooker. We plunge into the gloom of Gleemoor Tunnel at the summit and get an impression of the footplate at night. Breaking back into daylight, the run along the top of the S&C can be made with relatively little steam, but the injectors still have to be opened. Bullies were amongst the smoothest riding engines on BR, but the S&C track work has deteriorated in recent years. Now that the line is to remain part of BR and money is being spent, this will no doubt be improved. Rise Hill Tunnel is the last before Garsdale, the water stop for all S&C steam runs. The large 6,000-gallon tender means that Clenline can run with a greater margin of reserve than locomotives of other railways, which relied on water troughs for refilling on the move. Driver Parent applies the train brake to effect the Garsdale stop. This is a combination vacuum brake applying both locomotive and train brakes. "20 minutes are allocated for the water stop, just enough time to get out and see her depart northwards.